Whenever you are back there. Wow, there we go.
Finger on the button, apparently.
All right, welcome everyone to the April 7th, 2015 Shakopee City Council meeting. Ms. Henson, could you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Whiting.
Here.
Councilmember Luce.
Here.
Councilmember Mokel.
Here.
Councilmember Lehman.
Here.
Mayor Tapke.
Here. All stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, item number 3, approval of the agenda. Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would ask that item 8F2 be removed from tonight's agenda.
8F2 removed from the agenda. Anything else?
Nothing else from staff.
Anything from council? Motion for Council Whiting.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Mokel. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Item 4, consent business. Anything to add or remove from consent this evening? Yes, sir.
Number is this, for a, for C2,
All right, 4C2.
5F4,
4F4?
4F4.
yeah.
Okay. 5C2 and 4F4. Anything else?
Nope.
All right, so 5C2 and 4F4 removed from consent. Anything else? Councilor Luce.
A2,
Move A2. Okay.
let's see here. I just would like to reserve a right on C5 to make a comment. D,
Take it out.
D.
Well, you can
D2
just
for comment.
you can make your comments during the discussion, so you don't need to take it off.
E1,
Take off or comment.
take off.
Okay. All right, so we have removed from consent 4A2, 4C2, 4E1, 4F4. Is that correct?
A2 was off?
That's what I said,
Okay. Okay, oh, my bad.
or I intended to say.
My,
All right, do we have a motion? Councilor Lehman, do
Motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
we have a second?
second.
Second by Councilor Luce. Ms. Wilson, could you please read consent business?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 4A1 adopts resolution number 7562, a resolution designating methods of sanitary sewer service repair. 4A2 was removed from consent. 4A3 authorizes the appropriate city officials to enter into a contract with Hoisington Kogler Group, Inc. and SRF Consulting Group for an amount not to exceed $73,700 for the preparation and completion of a Western Shakopee Jackson Township Master Land Use Study. 4C1 awards a contract for the 2015 Bituminous Overlay Project, project number 2015-2, through the adoption of resolution number 7563. 4C2 was removed from consent. 4C3 approves the county 17-32 cooperative agreement and authorizes the appropriate city officials to execute the construction agreement. 4C4 orders the undergrounding of power lines along county state aid SA 17. 4C5 authorizes the execution of a contract for the train safety quiet zone study. For D1, authorizes the hiring of Barb Hedstrom as the Victim and Community Services Coordinator at Step C of Grade 5 of the city's non-union pay plan, subject to successful completion of the required pre-employment physical and psychological exam. For D2, authorizes the appropriate officials to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Police Sergeants Union. For E1 was removed from consent. For F1, approves the payment of bills and electronic fund transfers in the amount of $1,587,122.90. For F2, approves the minutes of the March 12th and March 17th, 2015 City Council meeting minutes. For F3, accepts the resignation of Barb Danielson from the Police Civil Service Commission and approves resolution number 7571, appointing John McBroom to the Police Civil Service Commission. F4 was removed from consent. For F5, directs staff to submit a notice of intent for publication in the city's official paper of record of the city's intent to consider a cable franchise application.
Thank you very much. Well done, as always. Councilor Luce, you had a couple comments you'd like to make?
Yes, the train deal, I would just like to make sure that everybody knows that this is just part of the beginning.
Could you pull your microphone down? Thanks.
This is 1 year into it. We've got about 5 months of consultant work to do, and then we start talks with the railroad just to keep people updated on how this is gonna progress. I would like to congratulate the sergeant that got the job. I know he's gonna work very hard for us, and he's one of the guys down there that I could actually call a friend. Not that the rest aren't, but I'm very, we know each other very well. I think that was, the other one was the Civil Service Commission. Mr. McBroom, that's coming on, he is more than qualified, and I just hope that he can do the job that he did with the school district. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, we are going to move on to item number 5, recognition of involved citizens by City Council. It's time where we let anyone who would like to speak for a maximum of 5 minutes come up and address council. No actions will be taken during this period, but we're welcome to hear anything. Oh, it looks like we got somebody popped up already.
Take some time. Where do I sign it? Here?
Yep, there's a sheet up there. Name and address, please, and also state your name and address for the record.
You bet. My name's Bill Iverson. I live at 1845 Countryside Drive.
And I don't know, Bill, if I said that it's for items that are not on the agenda.
It's not on
So,
the agenda.
okay,
no.
perfect.
I'm just here, my mother gave me this skill of, if there's something on your mind, say it. And I brought my family here in '04 to get a good education. Shockbee's done a great job. I have 2 kids in the top 20 in the Shockbee schools. And that's why I came here. And another thing that attracted me is the small town feel. And one of the things that I'm finding is this town's kind of losing that. It's like we're trying to become a metropolis rather than coveting what the city has. The small town is, it's worth a lot, and I don't know if a lot of people really see that, but I do. I just think you guys got a great deal going on here, and people need to take advantage of it. We're always trying to attract businesses and do that for what? I've been here since '04, and they said my property taxes were gonna go down, and they didn't. All I see is we have to build more schools, we gotta do more of these things, and everything costs money, and, I see that, but why doesn't Shakopee wanna stay smaller? But some of it, we've spent like $4,000 in trying to figure out how the city council can get along. And Brad, I was really disappointed when the meeting was going on, when that gal was facilitating and you're watching a basketball game on a cell phone. That really was upsetting. And then Kathy, you had your cell phone out, and there's times when you put your cell phones away and you're here for business. This is, city council time. It's not to share with others. The piece with the raise, Brad, you getting a raise, nobody else did. I think one of the council members filed for bankruptcy, as far as I know. And that's kind of sad. Somebody's having financial trouble, but yet the mayor, you're the only one that got any money, and that was really disappointing. Mark gets fired. Chris was kind of a natural to come into the job when he retired, and, you know, now all of a sudden she's helping out, trying to find somebody else to take the job, and where does that put her in her career, you know? And Chris does a great job, and, you know, it's gonna be, that's sad, because that was looking like the natural piece. Just tell me when I'm done. The Vikings, you know, when you invited the Vikings, that really upset me. It was like, nobody knew about it. I didn't know about it. I watch all you guys' meetings, and I was like, what the heck happened here and that? And all of a sudden, the Vikings are being invited, and you got signs and everything, and I thought all you guys kind of talk to each other and that, and communicate a lot, and I'm not seeing that, and that's really disappointing. Let's see what else. The autopilot comment, and that there was a vote taken, and it was 4-1, and it ended up where a lot of times Matt will vote against something, but you know, you went, oh, well, you said layman, and it was like autopilot, and you know, that's just extremely disrespectful to even make a comment like that. And you guys, it don't look good from a citizen sitting at home watching you guys on TV. It's kind of embarrassing. The $35 million you guys are asking for, kind of bad timing. Normally when people go shopping, they first set up a budget and figure out where you're gonna get the money. And this piece I've never seen before. Normally you just go, ooh, we can access these funds, and this is how much we got to work with, and then now let's go shopping. I get that, but we're going shopping, finding all the stuff, and then now we're gonna figure out where we're gonna get the money, and I don't do that at home. I normally figure out how much money I can afford. And I love raising my family in Shakopee. You know, I just wish the council would do a better job and be more professional. And that's all.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here. As always, I'm very open to speaking with anyone, so would love to sit down and talk with you sometime. You have just so you know, there are a lot of facts that are wrong in there, and would like to go over that with you at some point. So, anything else from council? All right, anyone else?
So, my name's Bill Rudnicki, and I'm here just to really comment on this person that just spoke. Sorry, I didn't get your name. I grew up in the small town of St. Bonnie, and I wasn't really planning to speak, but I thought it was important because today I found out that my mom was in the hospital over in Waconia. And when I left here, I worked for the tribe that owns Mystic Lake, the Shakopee Sioux. I had to drive from here all the way over to Waconia, and I understand where you're coming from the small town feel, but as I drive from here and I go through Chaska, I'm going to Waconia, that small town field is, you know, I grew up there 40, 50 years ago. It's not there, and I just want to tell you that I think you guys all understand the importance of the small town field, but you're in a growing area. I'm amazed to see the growth in the city of Waconia. That was a small town when I went to high school there. You know, my hometown is growing. The farm fields are full of houses, and I just wanted to let you know that I understand where you're coming from. We'd all love to live in that small town, but things have changed, and I just felt that it was important to express my concerns, because I think as a city council, you understand how growth works. You have some great professional staff that work for you, and I think you're doing a great job. So that's it.
Thank you, sir. Bill, will you state your address for the record as well? I don't think you got that one, sorry.
It's 4121 Country View Drive, Eagan, Minnesota.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Mr. Olson.
I'm Jordan Olson, Mayor and Council. Live at 249 Mount Street, excuse me. You know, I wasn't planning on speaking tonight either. I think both of these gentlemen made good points and everything, but I would, the bills, I should say. I just want to let you know that there are many more people that feel the way both of these gentlemen feel. And I really want to commend Mr. Bill Iverson for having the courage to get up and speak his mind in front of all of you and whoever else might be watching. It's not always easy. I've done this before, and it can be very nerve-wracking. So thank you for both of your comments. That's all I really wanted to say.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on to item number 7. We have no public hearings this evening. Item 7, business removed from consent agenda. We will start with Councilor Luce on item 4A2.
Why are we using code names? The public deserves to know what this project is. You know, personally, I don't feel this project's going to bring anything but bad to this city. And they're not just asking, they're demanding a substantial amount of money from the city. I know this has nothing to do with the AUAR, but I've got a feeling this project's going to be tried to be rammed through very quickly. And is anybody going to give us the name?
The name is Amazon.
Okay, that's all I needed to know, so people know it's Amazon.
Yeah, I believe it was said multiple times at the last meeting as well. But that's...
I'm just trying to make sure the public knows what's going on.
Yes. Anything else you want to discuss with that?
Not with that one.
All right, Councilor Lehman?
I'll ask a question. The update on this AUAR was in 2012. Was that update consistent with the proposed potential use on the site?
Councilor Lehman, members of the council, the magnitude of the square footage of the building proposed by Amazon is more than what was proposed for these two sites. However, what was looked at was what the employee count was and what the traffic generation was. And those were both consistent with the 2011-2012 update to the AUAR. Now, the fact is that should the property on the west side of Shenandoah develop further, and we expect that it will, that may trigger an update or a new AUAR, as well as the Scannell property should it develop at a higher density than it was said it would. But those would be separate environmental reviews.
Any other questions? All right, do we have a motion for this one? Councilor Whiting.
I make a motion to adopt Resolution 7569, a resolution of the City of Shakopee, Minnesota, declaring that an update to the final updated alternative urban area-wide review, AUAR, for Shenandoah Business Park in Minnesota Valley West is not triggered by our required for the distribution facility proposed, bounded on the north by CASA 101 and west by Shenandoah Boulevard and south by 4th Avenue.
Do we have a second? Second by Councilor Mokel. Any discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We're going to move on to 4C2, adopt a resolution supporting dedicated state funding for city streets. Councilor Lehman.
Well, I'm a little concerned that we're trying to roundabout way support a position by the state for a 6.5-cent gas tax, and I know that past councils haven't really asked this council, but typically councils like their local control, and they like to tell the state to leave us alone and let us run our cities, but now we're turning around and trying to tell them how to run their state. So I think it's kind of hypocritical of us to do that. So I don't necessarily support that concept. We should be paying for our roads, they should be building their roads, the county should be building their roads, and the feds should be taking care of their roads. We're asking for more money from the state. That's really not, I don't think that's our charge to tell them how to run their business.
Okay. Any other comments? Councilor Luce?
Yeah, I just don't like the state taxing us more and then deciding who gets it. They usually pick a different city than us.
Yeah, and this resolution, just so everybody knows, is there's a bill going through the legislature currently that would dedicate state funding for city streets. We already get a fair amount of money from the state, and the League of Minnesota Cities is sponsoring and pushing for this bill to get to dedicate the money that is raised to city streets and not to be used for other things. And so I think that that's a good thing, that we have the money coming back to us that we are already putting into the state.
Where's the money raised from?
The money is currently raised through all the different series of taxes. It's general fund money, as I understand, that will be utilized for this, but none of that is 100% known. So if you'd like to table this or vote it down for a little more clarity, it is simply supporting dedicated state funding for city streets. Councilor Whiting.
Move to recommend adoption of Resolution 7564 as funding city streets is important to overall transportation system.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilor Lehman.
I would, I'd like to see it tabled for more information to see where this funding is coming from, because we may in effect be asking for a tax increase.
This bill has nothing.
We don't know that. You don't know where the funding is coming from. Is it the 6.5% gas, 6.5 cent gas tax? Is it using existing surplus? Is it a new formula on the state aid formula? What is it? If it's a new state aid formula, I might be able to support that.
Councilor Whiting.
I just see it as an opportunity for cities to have another access to some funding for fixing their streets. You know, we've done a good job here in Shakopee lately, but there are other cities that could tap this, and we could potentially tap this for some of our projects too. So, if it's dedicated to streets and transportation, I see it as a good thing rather than wherever else they could send that money.
So if it's a 6.5 cent gas tax, you think that's a good thing?
Well, I'm not going to argue that here with you today.
I'm just asking a question.
Mr. Loney, do you have any further information on this?
Well, the only information I would add, Mayor, members of council, is that this is something that the league has been trying to get more funding for city streets. We obviously know the difficulty of assessing sometimes to the amount that the projects cost, and sometimes levy limits are placed on us, so which can restrict the amount of funds we can raise. This is just another funding source. I don't know exactly where the funding is. It's in the state bill. I'm assuming it's either through state taxes or maybe taking some of the gas tax and moving it over. But it's just something to raise to help cities with some of their funding of street maintenance and street projects. And it does not include any municipal state aid streets, which we do get funding for already.
Councilor Lehman.
Is there anybody in this room that doesn't agree with the following statement? We all know that the state has 10 years and they're gonna be broke and can only afford to maintain the existing roads that they have. Maintain only, not to build new infrastructure. Does anybody disagree with that statement? That's a fact. And it's pretty clear that they've been talking about it and talking about it. So now we're telling them to make that problem worse by giving us money that they can't afford to give away. Because they're already in a crunch. They can't rebuild their bridges, they can't rebuild their roads. They're telling us this already, and we're telling them, too bad, we'll take more of your money, make your problem worse, or you're gonna have to raise our taxes substantially. So I strongly don't agree with this. I think it's really bad policy on our behalf, and I think it's bad for the citizens of Shakopee and as well as the residents of the state of Minnesota.
Councilor Whiting.
Just wanted to call the question.
All right. With no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Passes 3-2 with Councilors Lehman and Luce in dissent. Item number, we're going to 4E1, Quarry Lake Park Development Timeline Schedule Adjustment. Councilor Luce.
I think it's time to set this one aside for a while. I mean, concrete prices and everything are up there according to what this is saying and with all the projects going on. The water ski show went on last year without any upgrades. They can make it through this year. We got a lot of other projects going on. Let's put it on the shelf for a year, take a good hard look at it and come back to it.
Isn't that exactly what this is doing?
Well, I just want to make sure that we know what we're going to do.
Well, I mean, this is putting it off until 2016.
Well, I want to take a good hard look at it in the meantime.
I'm confused, because that's exactly what this is saying. Ms. Wilson?
I was just looking for clarification of, is my understanding of the item before you tonight is that the preparation of final design plans and specifications would continue as under the contract already awarded. And they would come back to you for approval prior to seeking bids, would be the standard next step. So I just would like council to be clear, do you want the professionals at WSB and the architects that we've hired to continue doing the work that you've hired them to do? Or is the desire to have them actually halt their work on final designs and plans and specifications? I'm just looking for clarity.
Because what the proposed timeline in here is to, exactly what you said, hold off, bid it in spring of 2016 is so as anticipated, the project will be bid late fall, winter 2015 with construction to begin in early 2016. So that's going to hold off the development, the next steps of the process until the end of the year, beginning of next year. Are you comfortable with that?
No, I would like to see it put off probably a couple of years. We've got the community center project that everybody's talking about that, I don't think we can afford. We start adding this on to it with, what is it, over $1 million?
More than that.
All right, Councilor Lehman?
Let's see if I got this right. If we allow WSB and the various consultants to put the plans together, that doesn't necessarily mean we have to bid it out.
Correct.
We can put them on a shelf and hold them plans for a couple of years. How long can we hold the plans?
I would think for several years at least, they may need a brief updating depending on if codes or regulations have changed from when they were originally developed to when you want to bid them.
Right.
But
And then wasn't wasn't part of this, we were going to take the bigger building on the property and do that at a later date, phase it out, because that one part was so expensive?
Correct.
So I'm okay with doing the planning up for it and putting the plans and specs together, but I think when it comes time to bid it, we're gonna have to see where we're at financially, because we might have to put that out for a while.
As exactly with all the projects we do, exact same way. So do you have a motion?
Make me read with my bad eye, huh?
Uh-oh, I'm making you read?
City Council is asked to support the new construction timeline for the development of Quarry Lake Park. I'll make that as a motion as outlined by staff.
I'm sorry, could you say that, could you repeat
Well,
that for
it
me?
looks like the recommended action is asked to support the new construction timeline for the development of Quarry Lake Park, which puts it off an additional year, yeah, at least.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilor Mokel. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
All right.
Passes 4-1 with Councilor Luce in dissent. We're going to move on to 4F4, request to rename County Road 83. Councilor Lehman.
Yeah, I thought we could have a discussion about this. What's the rational basis behind this? I really don't see why it needs to change, to be honest with you.
Okay. Councilor Luce.
Well, my main question is, it was stuck in consent, and my copy is marked general business. 4F3 was consent, 4F5 was consent. Is this just a mistake, or somebody trying to slide one through?
Ms. Wilson?
Mr. Mayor, it would be a mistake. Our software program prints that on the top of these agenda items. I can't quite explain how the item before it and after it were labeled consent. My intent in being the author of the memo was that it was intended to be a consent item.
Does Mr. Rudnicki want to comment on why they want to do this?
Sure.
A little more detail?
I'm sure he would. Do we have any other questions from council at all at this time? Councilor Luce?
What's in it for us? I know they say they're gonna pay for the signs, but, you know, they get signs right up on the highway, that's gonna be worth a lot of money to the casino. People will be able to find them a whole lot easier.
Mr. Rudnicki?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. You know, being here kind of brings back old memories. Council member Lehman may have remembered me being at the podium July 3rd, probably about 6 or 7 years ago, when I was here talking to the city council about paving a city road. I remember thinking, what a great way to spend my night before July 4th, but I enjoyed that. I'm here once again to ask a simple request, and the reason that we have brought it forward, and I'm sure that you've all had a chance to read the letter that was sent to Acting City Administrator Chris Wilson. But for those that haven't, I have a copy of the letter. In here, we talk about the request to go ahead and rename a portion of County Road 83 lying south of US Highway 169 and north of the southern limit of the city of Shakopee from Canterbury Road to Mystic Lake Drive. The portion of County Road 83 lying in Prior Lake is already named Mystic Lake Drive. The attached drawing illustrates the area concern. This request is time critical. As maybe some of you are unaware, the tribe has worked out an agreement with the city, or with the state of Minnesota, with MnDOT, and that is to provide an additional lane on 169 that supports the not only the community, but it will start, the project will start in April or May of this year. When we add the additional lane, which is approximately $1.5 to $2 million, and those dollars are coming from the tribe, they're not city dollars, they're not taxpayers' dollars, we have to redesign some of the signs on 169. And it only makes sense, in our viewpoint, as we're doing the road design, adding the additional lane, not only to support our enterprise, but to support Canterbury, to support all of the enterprises that are on County Road 83. We felt that it would be time sensitive to move forward with this project. Essentially, you turn off, you see one sign that tells you one thing, and then you have another sign. So I think the letter is self-explanatory, but it really comes back to the point that what we're trying to do is get the correct direction for the people that are coming to our property. And I know that there's people that are concerned on the council, there's people that are concerned in the audience, and there's people that are watching on TV. And we made it very clear. We're requesting this. We are doing the 169 project. That's, you know, if something happens here and you don't approve it, we're still doing the 169 project. What we also realize, because we know we have citizens, a few citizens that are on that road, we know that they will be concerned about the fact that they may have to change their license or whatever. There's a statement in the city code on that, and we made it clear on page 2 that the community recognizes that there may be costs and inconveniences inherent in this process if the roadway name were changed. The community would pay all costs for new or replacement signage on Shakopee streets in Highway 83. As you're aware, we are a major landowner along County Road 83. So why does this come to the city? It's coming to the city not because, first of all, this has been out there for the last 5 years, but it made sense as we're doing the 169 lane addition, that this would be a logical choice. We have some signs that will either have to say one thing or another thing on the 169 project. I do look at it as if you don't take action, and we put these signs, or MnDOT puts these signs out on 169 that says XYZ Road, and at some point at a later date, you change it, then someone has to deal with the the cost of the change order. We feel that this is a time to go ahead and make the proposed change. Everyone has the map. And from our standpoint, the affected area is a short segment along the roadway. For those that are not, that weren't on the council and may not have remembered in roughly 2008, 2009, 2010, the Shakopee, Mdewakanton, and Sioux community was the major player in developing County Road 83. The roadway was not going to be rebuilt. It was going to be a two-lane road, two-lane rural road. We came in, we worked with our partners, Scott County, the city of Shakopee, the city of Prior Lake, and we developed a beautiful four-lane divided roadway. I don't think I should have to come here to beg and plead the city, but it seems like that's kind of what you're looking for me to do. I'm here to embrace the city. I think we have a great relationship. One of the things that we talked about was we talked to the management of Canterbury, because I know that might be a concern from some of you on the city council, if they would mind. And I believe the acting city administrator will indicate that Randy Sampson has no issues with that. If you want a letter from him, he'd gladly write you a letter. But I think our partnership, not only with Canterbury, it's a 10-year partnership that we have with them. I think you can see the success that will occur now, has occurred with Canterbury the last couple of years, and you're going to see some future successes down the road. It's key. I think the other thing that you might not recognize is that we're also a very close funder with the St. Francis and St. Gertrude's medical campus. We participate. We know that's a great facility. We know that that serves many of the communities. And that also brings up a good point, is that we also have a relationship with Rar Malting. So I hope that you guys will learn to embrace the tribe, because we're here, we're not going anywhere. And we have found a lot of good relationships. We've found a lot of good partners in this community. And I think to ask to change the name when we're going to pay for the name change, I don't think that's too much to ask for. I appreciate the desire for me to come up and speak on this point, because it's good that it's presented in a public fashion.
Councilor Lehman.
The agreement on 83, 6-7 years ago, was a loan that you gave the city, so we actually had to pay it back. But you did do your fair share on that road. And over the years, at least I feel that you and I have had a pretty decent relationship. The questions I have that aren't answered in here, you may have answered, but I don't know that I read them in writing. And I gotta admit, my eyesight right now is not the best. But it will be next week. I'm gonna get that taken care of. The properties on 83, currently they get their stuff and it's, what's your address? It's so-and-so, County Road 83. I assume that's on their property tax statements and all these other documents, and their mortgage and maybe their title of their property or whatever. How does that get changed? Same with their driver's licenses and mailbox stuff, and who pays that cost? I get the driver's license part, because you just go in when your license needs to be renewed, except if it's an address change, then it's a certain period of time. So I don't know if that was addressed in here, and if it was, I apologize because I didn't read it, but that's why I'm asking some of these questions.
Ms. Wilson.
Councilmember Lehman and members of council, it was not addressed in there, the specific question you asked. I guess staff was looking to know if the council is interested enough in pursuing this. The requested action was that staff dig into exactly those type of details, reach out to the county, reach out to, I believe there are 6 property owners along this stretch that would be impacted. We were just looking first for whether or not there was enough support or interest among council for us to investigate all of those detail type issues.
Bruce has got his hand.
Mr. Loney.
Yeah, Mayor, members of council, and I did talk to Mr. Rendicki before the meeting, and I think, Bill, you kind of indicated there would be some cost reimbursement for the property owners.
That's correct. My understanding is that there's a policy that the city has on when you change a street name, that there's a certain reimbursement process.
I don't know if we have quite that in writing, but I remember when I was in Prior Lake, we did that. And that
Okay.
was like
And
25
I'm
years
familiar
ago.
with
and-
that.
Yeah, but there is a cost. Probably there's one business, maybe 2 businesses out there that may have cost, and that's something that Ms. Wilson talked about. We would need to find out. And talking to Bill, they're receptive in reimbursing some of those costs.
As stated in the letter.
Councilor Mogul.
I would like to make a motion to direct staff to work with Scott County to identify the necessary actions to initiate a change to the road name, communicate the potential change of the road name to impacted property owners, and return to a future council meeting with a proposed action item.
Second that.
Second by Councilor Whiting. Any discussion? Councilor Lehman.
You stated there's some urgency in this. I'm not sure that motion takes care of your urgency.
You are correct, but, at this point, we have to go through the motions. We will tell the contractor, this is what's going on. So,
The project is anticipated to be completed June. Is that right? May?
Yes.
June?
June.
So I believe that as long as it comes back to the next meeting or two, we will be okay on this, correct? So by the first meeting of May.
We'll do our best, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Luce.
I'd like to get a couple things straight here. Who benefited the most from the 4 lanes on 83?
I could answer that question. Some people think that the tribe does, and we did. I can honestly say that. But I've also been at the intersection because I'm a biker. And I've watched the traffic, and I've watched the people that have gone from Prior Lake. I've watched the people that have gone from Shakopee. So I would suggest that if anyone wants to do some analysis, maybe do a traffic study. Yes, we have benefited, but I think, once again, in the spirit of partnerships, I think the entire city and county has benefited by having that 4-lane road. I can tell you, back in February of 2008, there was a major accident that closed down that roadway. Guess what? Those workers that were trying to go back and forth from work had to figure out 17 or go down 18. So there are some benefits on working collaboratively and cooperatively with the road. And I agree with Council Lehman. There was a small loan that the city of Shakopee received for the thing. However, to date, I do not believe that that's been repaid. So, but the bulk of that money, and once again, we're speaking millions of dollars were spent by the tribe on that road. And when you look at the portion that both Prior Lake and Shakopee paid on that road, it was much smaller due to our involvement in that roadway.
Councilor Whiting.
I just want to thank you, Bill, for the partnership that you have done with the 169 project that's coming up, and in the past on several of these projects. So this just moves it along, and I'm sorry that these steps sometimes seem like they're a little more friction than they have to be. But we'll move this along, and I'm sure staff will have this handled properly.
Councilor Luce.
Yeah, I just didn't think it was really appropriate for Bill to say that he had to come here and beg for this. Nobody's making you beg. We're just trying to get some things ironed out.
And Councilor Lehman.
Well, it doesn't happen often, but when I do go out there, once in a while I do benefit. I come out maybe 20 or 30 bucks richer. But at any rate, when you say biker, do you mean bicycle or motorcycle?
Bicycle.
Okay. I would have to agree that there's some regional benefit to that road being improved. Matter of fact, at the time I was on council when we did do the study of increasing the size of that road, there was a regional benefit along with 42. So, yeah, they get a benefit out of it, but anybody that drives on it, whether they're going there or somewhere else, gets a benefit also. So that there is a benefit that kind of goes around to a lot of different people. So let's find out from the county what this is going to take, and we'll bring her back and see where we go from there.
I just wanted, quickly, Councilor Luce, I just wanted to say as well that I don't necessarily look at this as the fact that the SMSC is doing projects on 83 and 169. At least myself, and I believe this council is very committed to partnerships and relationships with surrounding communities. Savage, Prior Lake, the SMSC, townships. We're working really well with townships now on other issues, and I see this as a neighboring entity who has requested something of us that we can do, and we've been having great luck with partnerships, and I think that that's a very good thing by working together, and I hope to continue that into the future as we go through things. So we have a motion, a second on the floor. Councilor Luce, do you have anything else you'd like to say?
Just one last comment. Bill mentioned the loan was a small loan. If that loan just happened to disappear and the paperwork was lost, wouldn't hurt my feelings.
Okay. I think we can say that that's already happened if it hasn't been paid yet. So anyway, without any further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. All right. Now that we are 50 minutes almost into the evening, we're going to get out of the consent business. We're going to go on to 8A1, Appeal of Board Decision regarding approval of conditional use permit for Northwest Asphalt, case log number 15-021. Mr. Leek.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. On the overhead, you'll see the location of the subject property and the appellant's property. On this graphic, we've got Stagecoach Road, Mara Street. The property that was granted the CUP and recently an amendment to it is Northwest Asphalt, which is here in the orange. It's at 1451 Stagecoach Road. The appellant is, appellants are at 1444 Mara Street. And as you see from the report, Northwest Asphalt already had a conditional use permit. It provided for crushing 20 days a year, essentially. They recently made a request, which was heard by the Board of Adjustments on March 5th, to change that to 60 days a year, and they were granted approval of that amendment. There was one additional condition, and that was regarding a water truck being on site during crushing to mitigate complaints about dust from the site. That amendment was granted by Resolution PC 15-010. Chris Anderson and Robert Kimmel have appealed that decision of the Board of Adjustment and Appeals to you. The test for you, or the analysis for you, is whether or not the Board of Adjustment made any omissions or errors in reaching that decision. I know that you have a very extensive packet of exhibits in front of you, and I'm not going to go through them. This is the only one I'm going to show you. But I think the two principal ones are the engineering reports that talk about the cause of damage to the buildings that the appellants are in, as well as Northwest Asphalt. With respect to the appellant's building, the basic finding of that report is it is not likely that the crushing is a primary cause of damage in that building, although it does state that that may be accelerating some of the damage that continues to occur. With respect to Northwest Asphalt, it says it's basically damage that comes from the moisture that gets into the block as a result of the freeze-thaw cycle that we have here in Minnesota. Based on that information that we received, it's staff's belief that that standard, that there is an error or omission in the board's judgment is not met. And so we are recommending to you that you approve Resolution 7570. That resolution would uphold the board's decision to approve the CUP numbered PC 15-010. Should you, after hearing any comment there is tonight, I think we have the appellant here, decide that you want to hold for the appellant, then you would deny or uphold the appeal of the appellant, and the existing conditional use permit that allows 20 days of crushing would remain in place. So with that, if you've got questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Leek? Council Lehman.
Mayor, I've got a couple questions. Somewhere I read in here that there's the current conditional use permit allows for the piles, if you will, to be 20 foot, and they're currently at 30. Did I read that right? And if that's the case, then that's out of compliance. And then the other question I had was, would it make sense to, well, let me back up a little bit. The location that the crushing is actually taking place on site, is that the ideal location? Could it be in a location that's maybe further away so you don't have the ground vibrations that the engineer report talks about, being at a certain level? And I didn't watch this meeting beforehand, so I don't know if that was discussed.
Councilor Lehman, with respect to that last question, I may ask the operators of Northwest Asphalt to address it specifically. But looking at the approved resolution, you'll note in condition number 6, it states that finished crushed material piles are permitted to be 30 feet in height, but for no longer than 48 hours. Now, we don't go out there and check that height continuously. One of the things that this operator has done over the years is, I forget the precise year, but there were substantial berms put in place and trees planted, and that's done a pretty good job of not only stabilizing soils, but also of screening the crushing area. But it does allow the piles to be 30 feet for a minimum period of time.
Okay.
Any further questions for Mr. Leek?
And then I have one
Council
last.
Whiting first, sorry.
Okay.
Well, okay, it mentions it in the report here, talks about additional testing may be completed during the crushing operation. Is this testing that the appellant is going to take care of in the future, or?
It is not, Councilor Whiting, members of the council, a requirement of the CUP for Northwest Asphalt that occurs. I think the suggestion is, if it's believed that additional testing might be warranted to demonstrate further what the cause of damage might be, that could be undertaken by the appellant.
Thank you.
Council Lehman.
Mayor, you know that the engineering report states that it's advancing the stages of structural issues. I guess that line concerns me a little bit. If we're allowing something that's happening to advance damages, and knowingly, that concerns me. So I'm sitting here trying to figure out how to minimize anything that's happening, and I don't know if the engineer study of the vibrations needs to be done to find out exactly to what level that is actually happening, if it's happening, because we don't really know that. Or if we, or if I ask the folks if they want to move to a location that can guarantee that that's not happening.
Councilor Lehman, with respect to that question, I would note that the language in the engineering report is pretty vague.
Right.
When it says advancing, we don't know at what rate and to what extent. And I think that's the reason for the suggestion of potential additional testing to try and ascertain what that would be. That being the case, I think it would be fairly difficult in the conditional use permit to control for that right now. And again, I'll let the operators of Northwest Asphalt address the question of the ideal location for the crushing operation.
I'm Debbie Hendrickson, and this is Mike Pfeiffer. We are the owners of Northwest Asphalt. I guess I can address that height issue. To start with, there is no pile there right now. There hasn't been since last fall. And when we do have a pile, I mean, we do flatten it out to the appropriate height as required. So I guess I'm not quite sure where that's coming from. We feel that we have been compliant in every aspect of the CUP. I guess in regards to building issues, I mean, as you have in front of you, we have, from my understanding, a similar building construction as Mr. Anderson, and we had an engineer review ours also, and you've got that attachment, and their feelings, what it is, just that it's due to water intrusion and weather related. And our building was built in 78. And we are probably even closer to the crusher than he would be.
Councilor Whiting.
That actually addresses my question a little bit. Where is that rock crusher located, and can it be moved from where it is to be a little farther away from the other property?
When it is there, because it's not there all the time. I don't know if this really,
There you go.
how do you?
What do you need?
Well, I'm just trying to give you an idea of where that would be.
Face the document so
Okay,
its bottom
this-
is
yeah,
facing you.
This picture, so as it says, here's the crush pile. That would be the chunks, the asphalt and concrete chunks to be crushed. And normally when there is a pile, that finished product pile is here. And the crusher, and the crusher usually sits obviously in between them.
Where's the buildings that question on this map?
This is our building.
Oh, wait a minute, right here. This is the, oh yeah, you're right, it is. That's ours right there.
And this is Chris and Roberts over here on the other side of the berm.
Let me scoot over a little.
We don't even have near enough space for this crushing. We talked about this the last time we were in, that part of the reason we want the time extension is because we can only handle so much material coming in and going out, and then we're just full of equipment, full of material, crushed or not crushed. So that really, once we burn it up, we need to be able to start over again. And right now, we can only do it once a year. We come in, our 20 days are gone, and that's the end of that. Whether we're full and ready to use that material on a project in Shakopee somewhere, we can't even crush it because we not allowed to. We're just looking for that. There's good years when the economy's good, there's a lot comes in, and other years we might not crush at all. And that's what we're trying to work with here. Just, it's gonna make everything flow better and have the material ready when we need it for projects.
It's just that added flexibility, so if we have a lot coming in from things going on in the community, we can crush a second time if we have room for that finished product pile.
Councilor Lehman.
Does moving it on the site even matter? Because, I mean, I'm not an engineer, so if you move it on the ground, is the ground like hard enough to where even if it's farther away, it still vibrates through the ground to the other areas? Or does it matter? If you're closer to that other building, will it rattle it more than if you're further away?
It just isn't too far we can go. There's some fuel pumps here that I don't think you can really see that fall right in between the area we're supposed to pile the chunks that need to be crushed and the area where we place the crushed material. And the crusher's pretty much got to sit right in between those two piles, and it can't be moved further away from Chris or Robert's property because it would be into the pumps and into our building, basically.
Okay.
Any other questions? Councilor Luce.
Yeah, I sat through the whole commission when they brought this forward. I think every answer was asked and answered, and I think they've got a good operation. They're doing as much as they can. As far as the building here, from my experience with buildings, water intrusion and freezing, that's caused by a leaky roof. That's not caused by the vibration. There are steps that could be taken to mitigate that, but that's not their fault.
Okay. Any further questions?
I have one last
Yes, sir.
staff question. What would it cost to do the vibration evaluation. Any idea?
Counselor Lehman, we've never done one, so I don't have an idea.
Okay.
Our only experience, when we've done projects for the city of Edina, they've had some projects where they've required it in their contract, and that, of course, would be on a much grander scale, where they do pre-construction surveys of every home and structure, you know, because of possible vibration claims. And that's usually been in the $30,000-$40,000 range. I mean, this would be much smaller, but I would think it would be several thousand. I don't know for sure.
Councilor Luce?
I believe Mr. Sabota from the city hall here was out there when they were crushing, and he was at some of the other businesses that are in question, and he said the vibration was minimal. That's just a person doing it. It's not giving you a meter or anything.
Staff verify that?
I can verify that that was Mr. Sabota's experience as he reported it, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I guess I'd have to wonder just a little bit. I know Mr. Anderson has rented those buildings for a number of years and only recently purchased. That if it's such a great concern, you know, why would he purchase, I guess, but, and that maybe he can address that.
Do we have the appellant here this evening?
I'm Anderson.
Okay. Would you like to address council?
No. Would you like
Like
to
to address
address the
council?
council?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Now would be the time.
If he thought you said you have a council.
Oh, got it. Thank you.
I'm Marlo Anderson. I've had a building down there for approximately 20 years.
Sir, could you state where you live as well, please, your home address?
Eden Prairie, right on the other side of the river, in about a mile. And it has been doing damage to our building, and I don't agree with the gentleman about it being wet, because all of a sudden it's this year that it has, we've been in there 21 years, and all of a sudden it's breaking lines in this concrete. And if you looked at the owners in Northwest, they also have a severe concrete cracking problem. I gave you some pictures, I presume you got. And the damage that's been brought to me, financial, is that I used to have a place called Smythe Outdoor Services, and they've been in here on the last time we had a CUP, and ended up moving out, because what happened is if they're in there crushing on a Saturday, and on Fridays they wash all their trucks, and all of a sudden they come back Monday morning, he has to wash all his trucks again. So it's costing him extra time hour. He ended up moving out because of it. So there's another loss to myself. Another loss is that while, can I hand something out to you guys, just so you have something? Is that okay?
What are we looking at?
This is low-end silica sand, or wherever they get the remnants, what you want to call it, coming from northwest. The wind is predominantly from west to east, and so I have complaints of people having to do the exact thing. I mean, I got business in there, they wash the car, they bring it, show it the car, the guy's a little late, and then they gotta go wash the car, which costs them expense. They can't park anything out overnight because of the time limit they've got to crush. They've been good neighbors, and I have nothing against them. It's just that it's one of those things. When your building starts cracking, or like your house or something like that, and you go downstairs, and there's damage in the foundation. You have the guy 2 days, 2 days earlier had been running pilings to keep his house from shifting. And that's what happens to us, is that we get the pilings stamping. It's sugar sand, basically. And we're about 4 or 5 feet below them by the elevation. And we're showing the fact that for some reason, our buildings are being damaged to, and we feel it's from the northwest people there. And I'd like to see, nobody wants to wreck any other person's business until we have they said, well, go get a seismologist or those things in the ground. That'd be fine if they want to do that and find out that it isn't. I won't have a complaint, but the fact of the matter is, I feel we do have a complaint. And if you read the last time we were in here with Smythe, he vented and said that to these guys, and they passed most, if not all, of the issues last time. They got berm put in, they've got trees put in, help stop the wind, and this time I just feel that it's important for, I understand it's important for them, but it shouldn't short my building, or our building.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Anderson from council? Nothing? Mr. Anderson, have anything else to discuss? We don't have any questions for you.
No, not at this time.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.
Oh, wait, I do have one.
Okay.
Has anybody been on the board gone there and looked at it? You did? To mine, or?
No, I wasn't on that side of the building, no.
Yeah, that's the other thing that concerns me. If we're having one of these get-togethers down here, that could cause a problem, that somebody from the city should be able to look at it and just make sure that they know what's available, and the next time it comes around, which there won't be a next time, is that we're having problems. But there might be a problem between myself or my former owners of the material, my building, I mean, that we all truly feel that it's the crushing, and one of my guys is a painter that's down there that owns, and he's had to repaint cars, and car painting isn't, $39.95 or $199 or $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 depending on the car. So that's it.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Any questions of staff? Councilor Whiting.
What is our options here for putting some pressure on getting some testing done prior to accepting this conditional use permit? Or we'd have to do it in a step by appealing the decision of the Board of Adjustments first, correct?
Mr. Thompson may want to address it, but I will attempt to address it, members of the council. If you feel that the conditional use permit as approved by the board should not move forward without a requirement that they do additional testing, then I think the direction and action you would be taking would be to recommend to staff that they amend the resolution upholding the granting of the amendment if you feel that's appropriate, and require additional testing. If you choose not to uphold the increase from 20 to 60 days, it seems to me that you might have to direct that the Board of Adjustment review what they did approve with the suggestion that they look at requiring additional testing. I don't know, Mr. Thompson, if you have other thoughts about that.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, my thought would be is that whatever you want to do, you keep it at this level. In other words, if you feel additional testing should be required before you decide the appeal. That would be the appropriate way to handle it. We need to talk to the applicant about time issues here because you have a time limit to review the application. But I wouldn't send it back to the board. I think it's before you. Your options are to deny the appeal, what the agenda, what the staff's recommendation is. You could table it for additional testing, but we have to address time issues. Or you could grant the appeal.
Councilor Lehman?
I guess my approach, what I'm thinking is, I'm okay with moving it forward the way it is, with the condition in there that they do a test and give us that result. Because if the results show that it is doing damage to buildings, then we have a problem. But if it shows it's not, then the extended timeline for crushing is a non-issue. Is that a possibility?
I need some clarification. Are you talking about testing on the Northwest Asphalt property or
Correct.
on the appellant's property?
Well, you'd have to test on the appellant's property during the activity.
Councilor Whiting?
What would be your criteria for?
Yeah.
I mean, do we have established criteria? I mean, that's the question.
It is the hard.
We already-
I mean, what if it was just a
Yeah,
earthquake?
so,
We already have an engineer's report that states that the damage is not being caused, or at least the root cause was not from the crushing.
Okay,
So we already have that engineer report in hand.
right.
Councilor Luce?
I think the board did due diligence. They ran this thing up and down the flagpole a number of times and questioned every which way they could, and I would go with their,
Are you putting that in the form of motion?
He doesn't like to do that.
If you were, it would be to uphold, or to approve resolution number 7570, upholding the board's decision to approve conditional use permit resolution number PC 15-010.
thank you.
That was your motion?
That's my motion.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second,
Seconded by Councilor Lehman.
discussion item.
Councilor Lehman?
Could I get permission to come out and watch your crushing operation next time you do it?
Absolutely, anytime. That's part of our conditional use permit is to notify the city and all the neighbors prior to the start, so that you're welcome to come by anytime, yeah.
All right.
What's the anticipated next time you'll be crushing? I mean, is it like this weekend, or is it a couple months?
May, first week of June.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move on to 8D1, expansion of Civil Service Commission's scope.
Mr. Mayor? Could I ask
Yes, sir.
10 minutes? This one's probably gonna take a little time.
Second.
What was your motion?
I'd like to take a 10-minute break.
We have a motion on the floor for a 10-minute break.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Lehman. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We are in recess for 10 minutes. recess, and we will move on to item number 8D1, expansion of Civil Service Commission scope. Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. This next item in front of you asks the council to consider the expansion of the scope of the existing Police Civil Service Commission to include both the police department and the fire department. This is a topic that Councilmember Luce has had an interest in and asked me to bring forward as an agenda item. The city of Shakopee has a Police Civil Service Commission and has had one since September of 1948. So it's a very long-standing practice here in Shakopee relative to our police department. The Police Civil Service Commission is made up of 3 residents who are appointed by the city council. They serve rotating 3-year terms, so every year one person's term is up. And it's not something that every city has. To have a civil service commission is an option that's provided for in state law, and cities can choose whether or not they want to have one or they do not want to have one. I would say that there are certainly other cities out there that have them, but we are definitely in a minority in the metropolitan area of having a police civil service commission. State law provides that you can have a police civil service commission, a fire civil service commission, a combined police and fire civil service commission, or like I said, no civil service structure at all. To the best of my knowledge, we are the only city in Scott County that currently has a civil service commission. I'm just going to give you a little rundown of what the commission does and does not do. I think I've got a total of 4 slides here, and then you can have a discussion about it. The Police Civil Service Commission basically does 3 things. They direct the hiring practices of the police department. They establish whether we're going to do written tests or fitness tests or oral interviews or some combination of the above. At the beginning of each process, they direct what components they want the candidates to be evaluated on and what the process should look like. Traditionally, here in Shakopee, our Police Civil Service Commission has directed that they want to personally conduct the final round interviews for licensed officer positions. And they have delegated to the chief the authority to administer the full process for non-licensed positions. So for our record staff, our community service officers, the department administrative assistant, that type of thing. And they have also delegated the first round of the testing process for licensed officer positions, and that's handled by department staff under our current practice. So directing hiring practices is probably where the current commission spends the vast majority of their time. When the hiring process is complete, whether they have directly participated in the interviews or not, they are called together to approve an eligible register, which is a rank order of candidates that scored at least a 70% or higher in the testing process. The second thing they do is establish the minimum qualifications to hold each job under their jurisdiction. So job descriptions, if they are being written new for a new position, or if they are being reviewed or updated for any reason, they go before the Civil Service Commission so that they can review what the minimum qualifications for the position are. And they receive 2 readings in front of the Civil Service Commission before coming forward to the City Council for final approval. And the third main area where the Civil Service Commission plays a role is in hearing certain disciplinary cases. Under civil service rules, the chief has the authority to issue discipline up to a 60-day suspension. In cases of a suspension that is greater than 60 days or a recommendation to terminate an employee of the police department, the chief makes a recommendation and the Civil Service Commission is the decider on that level of discipline. For discipline that the chief has the authority to implement, officers or any employee of the police department can appeal that discipline to the Civil Service Commission. We don't see this very often here in Shakopee because a majority of our employees who are subject to the Civil Service Commission are also union employees, and they have to choose either the union appeal route or the civil service appeal route. They can't appeal their discipline simultaneously down both paths, and most employees have chosen the union route in recent memory. So those are the 3 primary roles of your current Police Civil Service Commission. I think it's equally important to note what the commission does not do. First of all, they do not decide exactly who gets hired. They establish a rank order eligible register, which is basically a statement saying these people are qualified for the position, and here's the order from most qualified to less qualified, but still, acceptable. The process to decide exactly who gets hired is that the police chief can pick from any of the top 3 candidates on the eligible register, and they recommend that hiring to the appointing authority. Under current city ordinance, the appointing authority for police officer and below in the rank order is the city administrator. Sergeants, captains, and the position of chief, the recommendation would come to the city council of a recommendation to hire one of the top 3 candidates on the eligible register. Second thing that the Civil Service Commission does not do is determine the number or type of staff positions. They do not get involved in recommending new positions or recommending eliminating positions or anything like that. They are not at all involved in establishing the wage or benefit levels for employees that fall under the commission. They do not get involved in the department's budget request, and they do not establish personnel policies, work hours, or standard operating procedures. We have a set of civil service rules, and they were included in your packet. When a city opts to have a civil service commission of any type, state law requires that they adopt a set of civil service rules, and state law dictates kind of some minimum parameters of those civil service rules. The local jurisdiction can add on additional rules to their civil service structure if they so choose, but they have to at least meet the minimum thresholds that are provided in state law. Our civil service rules, they establish posting and notice requirements for job openings within the police department. One of the results, and probably the most visible result of having a police civil service commission, is that our hiring process takes a little bit longer in the police department. We publish a notice at least 10 days before the application deadline in the official paper of record. We publish a second notice 10 days before the first round of testing takes place, and we're required to send written notice by mail to each candidate of their interview date and time 10 days prior to their interview date and time. So the process of working through those results in a somewhat longer process for civil service hiring. Civil service rules also establish the parameters under which the department can hire temporary or interim employees. They include rules for probationary periods for employees. And they do a handful of other things, but they largely fall into either these 3 categories or they're structured around the hiring process. And as I said, the complete rules were included in your packet. With the concept of possibly expanding the Police Civil Service Commission to also have jurisdiction over employees in the fire department, there are a few possible concerns that I want you to be aware of. The first is that if the City Council has the authority to make it a joint police and fire civil service commission, but once you do, you can never undo that action. It would take approval by the voters to undo a fire civil service commission. This is different than the police civil service commission, which can be abolished by a unanimous vote of the city council. Obviously, that hasn't happened here. We've had it for decades here in Shakopee, but I want you to be aware of that with this item. Second possible concern is really the combination of the second 2 bullet points. The rules state that the civil service process must include all employees of the department. So firefighters, administrative assistants, receptionists, anybody that works for the department. So it's not just police officers and firefighters, but any employee of the department must fall under the civil service rules. You can't kind of pick and choose and say these employees are going to be civil service and these are not. In and of itself, that's not necessarily a concern. I think the concern comes with that rule will mean that if you establish the Civil Service Commission with jurisdiction over the fire department, you will be required to give it jurisdiction over both the paid on-call employees and the full-time employees of the department. Again, at first blush, not necessarily a problem. We want to have excellent hiring and personnel practices for both groups of employees. However, it carries with it the requirement that is a bit of a problem in my opinion. And that is, under civil service rules, no one can be required to serve a probationary period that is longer than 6 months. There is a exception in state law that says for the police department, licensed officers can serve a 12-month probationary period. But our civilian employees in the police department, our records staff, our administrative support staff, our CSO, they are the only employees on the city staff that only serve a 6-month probationary period. Otherwise, officers under the exception and all of our non-civil service employees serve a 12-month probationary period. When you get to the paid-on-call fire side, it's an even bigger gap. The current policy of the city, as previously adopted by the council, is that paid-on-call firefighters serve a 24-month or a 2-year probationary period before they obtain what's called just cause status. And the reason for that is the significant difference in the minimum qualifications to gain entry into that paid-on-call staff and the work environment there. When we hire a licensed police officer, they're just that. They're already licensed. They've gone to college and have at least a 2-year degree. They've gone to a skills program at one of the technical colleges that is certified to offer skills program, and they've sat for the state licensing exam and passed it. So when we hire a police officer, we come with that sort of, good housekeeping seal of approval, or in this case, the post board seal of approval, that says they have a good underlying knowledge and foundation to begin a career in this part. When we hire a paid-on-call firefighter, it's a very different environment. And, it's not their primary job. It's a service to the community. And our minimum qualifications for being hired as a firefighter are that you be at least 18 years old, you have a high school diploma, and you have a valid driver's license. There's no requirement that you have any training related to the fire service. We provide and pay for all of that training, a significant portion of it on the first year on the job, but then it's an ongoing process of training firefighters. Many of them have never been on an emergency scene, have never faced some of the things that firefighters need to face and react and respond to. As I noted, our new hire paid-on-call staff spend the vast majority of their first year on the job in classroom training. This takes them away from the Monday night training that we do for our more senior members of our non-probationary paid-on-call firefighters. It results in them not having as much experience on scene. When they do come on scene, they aren't given the same jobs until they've passed some of their education and training. So the purpose of the current 2-year probationary period for paid-on-call firefighters is that we get that first year to make sure they can get through the academic and the classroom part of the training, and then we get a year to evaluate how they perform on the job, which in that year on the job is what we get day in and day out with our full-time employees, 40 hours a week. And in this case, it's certainly not 40 hours a week. It depends on which calls they respond to and so on. So giving up that ability to have that evaluation period before an employee is granted just cause status would be a concern about this expansion. So, as promised, that's my 4 slides, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Councilor Lehman.
Mayor, I'll lead the questions. So if I understand this right, if we had a separate, not a joint, but a separate fire civil service commission, it would still be a 6-month probationary period.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Councilor Luce.
I'd just like to let everyone know I took the liberty of asking the Civil Service Commission if they would do both, and they agreed to it. So if we do this, they're on board.
Councilor Lehman.
My concern here is, at first blush, it sounds like a good idea, but after learning some of this information, I guess I kind of raises some really big concerns for me, actually. I don't like the fact that once you do it, you can't undo it unless it's by a voter referendum. Let me back up. I don't like the fact that the state law is inconsistent between the two to begin with. But that being what it is, I don't like that issue, and I really don't like the 6-month thing, because I think that's really a problem for the fire department. I just can't imagine, I'm trying to work this through my brain that, okay, you hire 10 new firefighters, they're not even trained yet. you know, their 6-month probationary period is up. You put the investment into the training and the equipment. Some of this equipment, I would imagine, is custom to the individual. Put them in a situation and find out that's just not their cup of tea. That just doesn't make no sense to me. Sorry, it just.
Before we get too far down, Councilor Luce, you requested this. Can you explain why and what's behind it and what your reasoning is for us, please?
My reasoning is, as you all know, I spent most of last year Monday nights with the fire department, and I listened to a lot of complaining and negativeness towards the hiring process that went on with the 4 full-time people. And I believe that it's a very negative thing in our fire department to have that happen. And I'm not saying anything was done wrong. I will not go that far. I just say it, the way the guys told me, it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck. But I can't prove anything. I'm not saying it. I will believe the people that I spoke to that it was totally fair. But we need to take that element away from the process so that there isn't that faintest idea that it's rigged. This would do it. I agree. I do not like the 6-month deal. What I would like to have done is if the fire chief and his people could work on some type of review board that does not contain any of their people, does not contain city staff. Something similar to the review board, but that would take that onus that, you know, it's rigged.
Okay. Councilor Whiting, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. I do have a problem with the probationary period time. I think you need that longer probationary period to, like you said, decide whether if it's for them or not. You might not have an opportunity to experience some of the things they experience in that shorter window. I understand where you're trying to go with this, and I think when we hired the 4 paid employees, there were some questions there, and I think we did a lot to make sure that it was above board and went through some extra processes to try and get there. So I just can't support this with the way it is right now.
Councilor Luce.
One suggestion I would make would be that if the probationary people could ride with the full-time people, as I did, and you'll find out real quick if they can handle it or not with what I saw. I mean, I still see that. And we ended up on a fatal car accident. Dump truck with a PT Cruiser. You can imagine who won. You know,
Councilor Luce, just so you know, you can't talk about details.
No,
as you were.
I know that. I'm just, you know, you'll find out. You'll weed them out.
Councilor Lehman.
One of the problems I think you run into with a civilian type board, if you wanted to do that, a review type board made up out of just citizens from the community, I think one of the problems you're going to run into is the issues that might arise in this department are specific. And I mean them specific to that department's charge. And, you know, even us sitting here couldn't really tell you what a lot of that equipment is and how it's properly used and what the proper process of it is and so on and so forth. So it'd be really hard for an average person to oversee and review something that they're not trained in. You might be able to do it with like retired folks that have that knowledge, but then again, you've got the problem with the technology changing as we move forward. So, you know, I totally understand some of your concerns. I have some of them concerns myself. I think the best way to deal with that is internally. I think we've been doing some of that. And whenever there's change, there's always some growing pains with that change. I think we're finding some of that within Shakopee. You know, we've got a competent chief that's aware of some of these issues, and you know, I'm confident that he's gonna actively address these issues too as we move forward with his department. And, you know, and if he doesn't, well, you know, then we have another internal issue, but I'm not saying that's the case. That goes along with any department, so.
Councilor Luce.
I would like to recommend staff look at this severely and try and figure something out that they can help us out, and at this point, I would like to table this issue.
Okay. Councilor Mokel.
I was just going to comment that maybe we just look at the hiring process and processes and determine if we do need to audit that and change some things.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
If I might, really quickly, and I understand that Councilmember Luce's concern is based on the appearance of impropriety and that he is not making accusations, but since the subject has been brought up, the process for hiring the 4 full-time firefighters that we currently have on the city staff was extensive. It was externally advertised. A written exam, nationally certified written exam, was given to all applicants. Then Assistant Fire Chief Dave Judd and myself sat through 3 solid days of oral interviews with candidates. We narrowed the pool, and they were interviewed in the second round by a panel that consisted of Fire Chief Rick Coleman, Police Chief Jeff Tate, and Emergency or Public Safety Director for the Shakopee Metawakan Sioux community, and their public safety department is heavily fire-based, specifically at the time we interviewed. So I would have to tell you that the process we use to hire 4 full-time firefighters is very similar to the process that we would use in any other department of the city, including bringing in somebody from outside the city organization, but that has expertise in the field. We recently interviewed for a building official. The city of Prior Lake was kind enough to loan us their building official for several hours to participate in those interviews. And that's common practice here, to bring in that fresh perspective and somebody with that knowledge and expertise, but somebody from another city or jurisdiction that can provide us with that insight.
And real quick, did you just recommend that we table it, or did you actually make a motion to table it?
At this point in time, I don't want to give up on it. I would like to give staff a chance to come up with something. One consideration I would make is Prior Lake is so close. I would say that we try and look a distance away so there's no idea that these people even know each other.
Councilor Lehman?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but under the Minnesota data privacy, employee privacy laws, if candidate X scores a 90 in all his testing, and candidate Y scores a 70, and candidate with the 90 is selected, and candidate with the 70 is not and is complaining, that candidate doesn't know what that other candidate's score was.
I would have to check on that. The scores of the candidates on an eligible register for police are public information, and the eligible register itself is public information. When you get away from having an official eligible register with a numeric percentage number on it, I would have to double check what would be public to the unsuccessful candidate.
Okay, because what I'm thinking is if you have a pool of people and that pool sees that the people being selected are the highest scoring people, it's kind of hard to argue that, isn't it?
One would think. Mr. Mayor, if I could, I just have one other comment.
Yeah.
We currently have no open full-time positions in the fire department, and I mean, someone can resign, I guess, technically at any time, but I don't anticipate, we're not expecting any retirements or anything like that. So relative to the full-time staff, I don't know if this is something you want us spending our time coming up with a hypothetical process when we have no need to put one in place, or it's just something you want directed the next time that there is a full-time opening. We do have paid on-call openings, and it would be our practice to get those advertised here in the next couple of weeks, normally. And those typically include existing paid on-call staff interviewing the prospective candidates. I typically don't sit in on the interviews for our paid on-call staff. It's done within the department.
Councilor Lehman?
Do we have anybody from outside the department sitting in on that process?
On the paid on-call process, to the best of my knowledge and my time here, no, we have not. We have outside evaluation of the candidates in two forms, and that is that they go through a pre-employment psychological evaluation, and they go through a pre-employment functional capacity exam where they drag hose and climb ladders and do things, you know, and a professional licensed physical therapist observes them doing that and certifies that they are physically capable of doing the job, and likely the consulting psychologists give us a report about their ability to handle the challenges and stresses of the job, make decisions in times of, you know, pressure and that type of thing. So there's those outside eyes on the candidates, but currently we don't use external people. That could be a challenge. We ask a lot of our existing paid-on-call firefighters, and I'm sure other cities do as well, and to get paid-on-call firefighters from other departments that are willing to give up yet another evening of their time to come here and interview on our panels may be a bit of a challenge.
Mayor, I wasn't thinking that. I was thinking it could be just a city staff person, not from that department.
Okay. We have used police department command staff in our interviews for officer positions within the fire department. Not every single time we've interviewed, but I know Captain Delwo has sat in on interviews at different times when we've been hiring for like assistant chief or that type of thing. We can certainly look into that.
Okay.
Further questions, discussion? I do have to say that I have the utmost respect and confidence in Chief Coleman as well as Acting City Administrator Wilson in the process that was taken for the full-time firefighters to be hired, and I believe that everything was done extremely well. I've talked to some folks who are extremely unhappy with the results of it, but I myself have talked to a lot more people who are very happy with the results of the process from the fire department. So I know that there are definitely differences of opinion there, and I don't think the problem myself is with the hiring process. But if you do think there was a problem with the hiring process, then my opinion is that's a problem with Ms. Wilson and Chief Coleman, and we should address that problem other than the process. So my feel is that if we have an issue as a body with performance of either of those folks, we should address that, and that my opinion is the hiring process is sound the same way it is with any other place that we hire. So if we want to go that direction and handle performance, we absolutely can, if that's the goal or want of the body. But from my perspective, the hiring process is sound, and if we start picking away at this one, you have to pick away at a lot of different things at the same time so that it's managed equally, which adds a ton of red tape and time to things. So that's just my opinion with this. Councilor Whiting, you have something to say?
Just that I had personally scrutinized that hiring process of those full-time firemen, and I want to agree with you that I have the utmost confidence in the chief and the people that were chosen for the job, and of course Miss Wilson and her part in the process. So I believe that process was done properly, and I have no questions. So.
Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, I would only, I think I would ask that both the chief and assistant or acting administrator look into, and this isn't a time rush, but having a non-departmental observer from city staff during the paid-on-call portion of it.
Can certainly do that.
Is there, Councilor Luce, do you have any concerns with the paid-on-call portion of those hirings, or is it just the
I just
full-time?
think we need transparency, that, you know, just so there's a lot less to gripe about. And like you said, I'm not saying anything was flawed in the process.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any of the people did anything wrong, but I'm just was asked to bring this forward, and I'm doing what I was asked to do.
Okay, good. So do we have any motions?
I make a motion to table it.
Until?
Till such time staff can come back with some kind of suggestion.
Okay, well, we're gonna have to be more specific about what we're looking at for a suggestion.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, if Councilman Lucius wants to put this on hold, I think the appropriate motion is just to table and get that motion passed. If you want to give some further direction to staff on hiring process, you should take that independent of this, because this is an action specifically for the fire civil service, and I think staff needs to be clear that you're not asking them to go any further.
Well, we also don't have to take any action.
No, you
as
don't have to-
well, right?
no, you don't have to take any
We could
action.
just
I'm
let
There's
it
a
go.
motion made.
I'm gonna
so-
make a motion on this item that's in front of me.
Do we have a motion already
What?
partially made? Was it?
There's no second.
Yeah, there's no second, so I'm gonna make a motion to table the
Sorry,
item.
I didn't ask for a second yet.
Oh,
I don't want to mess it up. I don't want to get in trouble.
Yep.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second for that motion? Do we have a second? All right, seeing none, Counselor Lehman.
I'm gonna make a motion to table this item indefinitely. The item that's in front of me, which would be a Civil Service Commission for the fire department, and my rationale is I cannot live with the 3-month or 6-month probationary period. It just doesn't work. And then I'll make a follow-up motion if there is a second.
All right, do we have a second to that?
Yes, second.
All right, second by Counselor Luce. No discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Counselor Lehman.
I make a motion to direct staff to look at the possibility of having an independent observer in the hiring process for the paid-on-call at their convenience. I understand that your workload is heavy, so. And it may not be the right thing to do, so just take a look at it.
Do we have a second for that?
Second.
All right, motion by Counselor Lehman, seconded by Counselor Luce. Could you repeat again?
The motion is to direct staff to take a look at the possibility of having a independent city staff observation person at the paid-on-call hiring process at staff's discretion for timeline to bring it back, because I understand they're busy, and it's not a real pressing issue.
Okay. Do we have any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone. We're going to move on to 8F1, Results of City Hall Feasibility Study.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. Tonight we have for you the results of a study that you requested probably about 8 months ago. I think in July or August of last year, the direction was to hire BKV as an architectural group to evaluate the possibility and the potential cost or estimated cost of remodeling this City Hall building that we are in tonight to better meet the city's long-term needs versus the cost and feasibility of constructing a new City Hall. And the most likely and the location for that was explored would be on Gorman Street attached to the police station, where the city currently owns a vacant parcel of land next to the police station. So Bruce Schwartzman from BKV is here, and he will present to you the results of his study.
Mayor, council, staff, folks that are still left for the last little bit. I feel kind of
Our watching load on cable is about $1 million, $1.5 million.
not a problem. So anyway, thank you all for having me this evening. It's good to see you all. So as Ms. Wilson mentioned, it's been about 8 months or so since we started the study. We've done a number of things. We had a kickoff meeting to go through some information. We issued questionnaires to, I think yourselves were included in that questionnaire, as well as staff, to get an understanding of the existing conditions, of the potential staff changes, all these kinds of factors that can influence building needs over a life cycle of a building. From that, we had interviews, and we refined some of the programming and some of the information, and developed a whole series of programs that were, I'll pull this up real quick, so, oops, how does that go to that one?
Drag it.
Oh, drag it to, oops. Let me close out of this one.
Nope, let me help.
Oops. Oh, thank you. I'll expand it. So it was a series of programs. So all of these programs were developed with each department, looking at staffing, looking at operational space, and things that we understood the working conditions of various departments. And again, we've been doing this for 38 years, and we've done over 60, 70 some city and county type government facilities, so we have a fairly good handle on a lot of this information. So this is the backup information to help to give the square footage projections for the plans that you all see. So that's kind of that. Is this, oh, there you go. So again, we went through administration, we looked at administration spaces, we looked at staff and the staff projections within administration. We looked at finance and clerk, and again, all those types of spaces. So all of this, and it will be part of the final report, but it's this data, excuse me, this data that we're showing up here has helped to develop the plans. So, to get into the plans, some of the things we looked at, single point of access to the building, improved security, as we've seen tonight, various people kind of wandering through the building. People can get into the lower level without really knowing they're there. Accessible restrooms, right now they're on the lower level. There, council chamber design, flexibility function. This desk is almost larger than my desk at my office, so this is quite the sizable podium piece, as well as some of the columns that conflict views and things like that. Appropriate space utilization, development of the related, kind of what we look at more and more with cities and counties is that idea of one-stop shopping, providing services to the community as efficiently as possible, not just for the citizens of the community, but also for the staff that serve them as well, that interaction between the various departments. And then just looking at the long-term spatial requirements so that the master plan that we're providing is a good, thorough analysis that serves the city well, not just for the next 2 years, but really for the next 20, 25 years into the future. And so again, we looked at staff and staff operations. Also part of our team was Dave Unmach, that a lot of you probably know as well from his work at his job at Prior Lake, his Belle Plaine. He's kind of a local guy that used to be a county administrator with Scott County. We've worked with David on a number of projects where David brings kind of a unique perspective to our planning team from an operational staff analysis. So Dave's was a tremendous asset, and I think Dave did present his kind of staffing organization to you as well. So from the various pieces of the study that we put together, from the space programs that you saw, we really identified 4 primary building options, planning options that came from all that data. One was to remodel the existing building without adding existing space. And as we go into each of the options, I'll talk about those a little bit more. One is remodeling the existing City Hall building and adding a second level to it. And you also see that we've really kind of changed, right now it's really a little undefined where the exact entrance, the identity to the City Hall is. You have parking on the one side, and but there's really Home Street is kind of a city entrance side. So option B looks at relocating a single entrance point off of Home Street. Option C is building as master planned some time ago. Option C is looking at, okay, what's the cost and what's the implications of building over it at the police station and creating more of a campus over there. And then option D was to say, okay, if this building doesn't function well, but the location is where we want to be, what would it cost to tear this building down and build a more functionally appropriate or more, better utilization of this site down where we're at? So, as we go into the various options, maybe I should shrink this down a little bit. So option A, again, as we talked about, was kind of reorganization. So you can see, on the primary floor here, so this is the main level. And basically what we've done now is turn, in this particular option, we're utilizing the access off the main street as our public entrance. We're creating a single point of public access off that lobby. We're adding restrooms up on this level. And we're really, in essence, in these plans, gutting and remodeling this building. We've created a main entrance lobby here with council chambers off to the side. So again, it's easily accessible in evenings and events like this. We've provided in all these plans, the stacking is roughly the same. So planning and building inspections is right here as you come in. The council chambers is off to the right. You've got administration off here, and you've got finance off to this level as well. As you go to the upper level.
Could you use the mouse to point on there?
Oh, yes, I'd be glad to, Mayor.
Because there's a pillar in my way, so if we could fix that in our...
Thank you for helping to demonstrate some of my points.
And nobody at home can see where you're pointing either, so if you could do that, I'd appreciate it.
Does the mouse show up well? Can you see that all right?
Yep. I can see it on my screen
Out of
here,
curiosity,
I can.
was it help to, you probably can't shut the lights off on that side, so we'll just continue as it is. So again, it's one of the first things we do, and I should step back. whenever we do these studies, and we do a lot of them. I'm in another city tomorrow, matter of fact, presenting on another one that we're doing. The first thing we will want to look at is the maximum utilization of the assets you currently have. So again, looking at this building holistically is something we take very seriously, because we want to make sure we're giving every opportunity for the various options. So when you look at this, the pros to this, and I'll try to be flow through it quickly so we don't delay some of this to get to some of your questions. But, you know, all of these options, some of the goals, it improves security. We all create a single point of access, so that's one of the pros. It provides the restrooms up on this level, which really helps to limit access to the lower level, because as you've all seen, it's a little circuitous. I mean, you can get lost down there, and in my opinion, it's somewhat of a safety hazard a little bit, because even though it does have required exits, people could potentially get lost in there in the event of a major emergency. The lower level does incorporate, you know, in the new plans, some locker rooms, some break rooms, some training areas. So we are utilizing it. It's not just being forgotten. Some of the cons to this option is IT is located in the lower level. Engineering department, if that is one of the options and one of the focuses which we have looked at, again, is that one-stop shopping being located over here. There's really not space in this building as is to allow that to happen. Another con is the public entrance is really off the parking lot, so it's public entrance to the City Hall is really facing more towards the parking lot than to the city itself. It lacks the integration. As staying down here, all of them aren't integrating with Police Department and Public Works, but again, it's ranking of these hierarchies, of these issues with the city to make sure you achieve what's most important to you and the city. Remodeling of this building as a whole requires some level of phasing. To gut and remodel this building as shown in these plans will require, and it's included in the costs, city basically moving out of the building, allowing the construction to occur, moving back when the building is completed. So while we have accounted for moving cost, temporary office space cost, the disruption and the operational inefficiency of it is pretty high. There will be a lot to that. So that's the pros and cons of this option. The cost, as we've identified, we went through a fairly detailed analysis of everything involved: new walls, demolition, what's required, construction costs. When you look at the building, the asbestos abatement, we understand the building, some potential site work, and contingency for unknown conditions and things that could happen or could be in the building as you go through a construction project. And contingency is typically higher with a remodeling of existing. We come up with about $3.7 million to remodel this building. On top of any construction project, as you all know, because you've all dealt with a number of projects that you're dealing with now as well, there's always soft cost. And soft cost, I've identified in this as moving costs, temporary lease space for offices in it, and that's assuming everything gets moved, that there's a location that can be found, a temporary location for the city council, not moving city council really more to a space that would, whether it's working it out with the county for a temporary basis or whatever, but really that cost identifies the bulk of city services. And then the other portion of the soft cost, which is substantial, is architecture and engineering fees, the furniture and fixtures, the reviews, the sack and whack charges, all those other ancillary kind of costs that go along with a construction project. So all told, it's about $4.8 million. Now, council, I don't know if you want to go through questions as with each option, or if it's your desire for me to just go through all the options. And okay, I'll do that, Mayor. The next option is then option B. So option B, again, we are proposing to remodel this existing city hall, but in this option, the main difference, the primary differences with this is on the main level here, the center drawing, we're now constructing a new vestibule off Home Street, and we're now saying Home Street is the front of the building. We're also, in this scheme, if you look at the top plan right here, right now, this sliver of space, if you can see where the cursor is going up between this little kind of offset of the building to the right, or to the left, excuse me, that's the extent of the upper level right now. To accommodate engineering and all the space required, and really put your staff in office space and workspace where they can have light rather than being buried in a basement without light, we're proposing expanding to this point on the upper level. And we had our structural engineers come out investigate the building, look above the structure. What we found is the roof joists that are in that area are not designed capable to handle a floor load, because typically a roof load, the design load is about 40 pounds per square foot. A live load for a floor system is about 120 pounds per square foot. So it's a substantial structural framing difference. So what this option would require would be ripping off that section of the roof, exposing the structures, and then we believe the foundation can support it. It's primarily adjusting the roof structure and supporting some additional beams. So in this option, like I say, the two primary differences between the last one is additional expansion on the second level, as well as really moving the entrance on Home Street. To do that, to move the addition on Home Street and still maintain public movement, we're now proposing adding an elevator on that side of the building as well. Because if you were to utilize the elevator that's currently on this side of the building, you're now allowing the public to have to be able to walk through the building to access the elevator. So to make this an efficient plan, it shows adding the elevator. So again, the pros, similar to the other one, it improves security. You now have a single point. When you look at the center plan, now this white shaded area or white area here is really your public access area. Your public counters and all that are right here. We're actually securing off the existing stair, so it can be used for exits, but it's not, public can't just get in there and walk downstairs and wander through the building, so we're controlling that. You can see in the plan on this level, on the main level right here, it's the Department of Development and Infrastructure, really primarily takes most of that space. Off to the right-hand side is the council chambers and the sporting control room and council workroom, some meeting room off the lobby as well. And then as you get to the second level, we've got finance, admin, IT, all of those other operational functions. So again, we're allowing the use of the stair to come up, and we're allowing an elevator so public can get up to finance and admin. We're providing some additional, in a lot of these schemes, I think, well, in this scheme particularly, this option will show some additional unisex restrooms in the back. And then the lower level, we're showing still facilities operations, and that's down. Oops, why am I doing that? I'm technically challenged sometimes, excuse me. So on the lower level, you can see that we're using that for archive storage, IT training, break room, facilities offices, which are currently down there, and just primarily utilizing it for some storage functions. The cost for this, so the cons to this, again, it requires the addition to meet the space requirements of the program, the long-term space. It still separates Public Works and Police from separation of the campus, and parking is still going to be limited. No matter what we do down here, parking is going to be limited. I think we know that. The current zoning for this area actually kind of negates the typical parking requirements that you see in a lot of subdivisions just because it's not available down here. Construction cost, again, the total construction cost for this particular project, with adding the elevator, the tearing off the roof and doing all that, is roughly about a $5.8 million construction cost. The soft cost for it, which typically soft cost on most projects run anywhere from 15 to 20% of the overall construction. So the soft cost for this project brings the total project to $6,950,000. So that's what option B would be. Option C, we then looked at the police station and how would these spaces and how would this function at the police station. And that was yes, ma'am.
Sorry to interrupt. This is different than what they received
Oh, yes, it is.
in
I should.
advance?
Yep.
So maybe you want to...
Yeah. So we the first plan you saw was when we were still in process. It was just a big rectangular mass. We've since then kind of inserted some of the program areas to give a little more definition to the plan. It's not by any means a final design at all, but what we're showing here on the main level is basically we're showing that, again, you've got this, what we're doing is somewhat mirroring, it's hard to see the cursor, at least I'm having a hard time seeing it. There it is. So we're mirroring the police department entrance that's on the one side of the building, and we're creating a similar type of entrance component on the other side where the city hall comes. So now you've got this clear identity. Here's your police entrance, here's your city hall entrance. You come into, again, this main corridor space. You've got your council chamber off to the side. You've got a workroom, council workroom off to the side, and you've got storage for the council. You've got your control room for their media, just like you have in this room, and that's all off your main lobby. One of the good things we found actually on this floor is we did a quick code analysis, and if right now with the police department, I understand the meeting room in the police department gets used quite a lot by the community. I forgot what the number of days that the police chief actually said. It was 200 and some. 218 days out of 365 is tremendous usage. So what we did is we took a calculation of that space. We're also showing the potential of a bonus meeting room kind of to the back of that. Again, if you can see the cursor, it's back in this area. So you basically got 3 large meeting areas. You got this community room in the police department, you got the other. The bonus I was talking about is we did a code analysis to determine the number of bathrooms required, and the bathrooms that are currently in the police station would actually serve this level of the building. So bathrooms would not actually have to be built because the occupant load works for what's shown in this building off the public restrooms. So again, on the main level, what we're showing now is we're showing offices and workstations and how that lays out, again, based on the program of development, the Department of Development and Infrastructure, and the idea of, light is such a tremendous asset in any building we do. It minimizes energy cost. It creates a good work environment for people there. So again, in a very conceptual form, what we're doing is showing this white section on the right-hand side here. That's where the public engages. So the public has the ability to come into this main lobby here. They can come down here. There's some service counters at this area, but to access meeting rooms and conferences and whatnot, they can come down this corridor, and then there's an exit back on that side. So you get light coming in here, and a lot of this area coming to his offices could get light coming into that area as well. So that's kind of the main level. On the upper level, oops. Here, let me grab the, there we go. On the upper level, what we're showing, again, very conceptual, but it works with the square footage that we programmed, was, a monumental stair, some kind of stair bringing people up from that main lobby area, the elevator accessing that. So again, this white exposed area is a public area. We're showing the idea that this could be an atrium space, a 2-story atrium where you could look down into the main lobby. So you've got this public access corridor to the front. You've got some meeting rooms, IT training rooms off this. So you have IT to one side, you have a counter to administration, and you have finance and all their various offices, workstations, workrooms, storage rooms, all that is encased within that area as well. And again, when you look at a campus plan, the idea of the overall campus, oops. So now what you have is you have a city hall, police department, and then across the street, Public Works as well. One of the things we discussed with this planning option to minimize the square footage of the new city hall as well, that facilities, instead of being in this building, since they're now part of this overall complex, facilities could actually be part in the old engineering building as well. Again, helping to minimize overall cost in this building. Another good thing that this option provides that the others don't is you've got the ability for expansion. So we showed that the building footprint could grow in the future if needed, because there is property to allow that to occur. And if needed, if the police access road is still needed there's enough property on the north side to move around. One of the other differences with this option versus the downtown option is this would fall under the city zoning requirements for one parking space for every 250 net square feet of usable floor area, which in talking to Kyle, I think at the city, and some of the other folks, when we look at adding this addition with the police department, I think roughly we're figuring 60 to 70 spaces of off-site parking would actually be needed. And as you can see, with expansion of that parking lot to create kind of a drop-off area in front of the city hall, to create parking that supports the city as well as the meeting rooms that are currently there, we can actually get up to 80 spaces or so without really pushing it much. So that works out fairly well. From a cost standpoint, let me zoom out of this a little bit. Okay, so the pros and cons, I think we kind of went through that as far as location. Of course, it enhances security. Because it's a new open footprint, it's a little more operationally efficient as far as the layout and what we're able to achieve versus trying to work within the existing confines of this building. One of the cons of this that's been brought up is it's not in the core downtown area. It is more towards that east side. It's over in that area, but it's not in the core downtown area. The determination of what happens to this building would have to be something that's talked about and determined. I know there's been some discussion of the need for parking. Does that become something that supports the downtown and the downtown businesses by allowing this to be parking to support some of that function? The construction cost for this, excuse me, all told, construction cost about $6.4 million. The soft costs for this, which don't require relocation and things like that, about $900,000, making this option about $7,300,000. Again, one of the pros to this is that could be constructed, and then once it's completed, city staff then move into the building, so it's not that operational direct disruption, and you're not paying that amount for the city to be located at a separate location. I mean, strictly looking, just a quick summary, in our opinion, option A doesn't work. It doesn't provide the long-term vision or the space needed for the city, so it really doesn't work. Option B works, but you're spending a significant amount. Oh, I'm sorry, there is one more option. I forgot. I got ahead of myself. Let me get to option D. So option D is the idea that we talked about of utilizing the site, but demolishing the existing building. So just so you know, this is what we did with this footprint was basically say, okay, if we were building out the police site, we're looking at a two-story building. What would a two-story building look like here? Could you go 3? Yeah, but there's a certain inefficiency of the verticalness, but you could go 3. And so what we did for kind of looking at this site was, right now there is not parking along in front of the City Hall site. So we looked at the idea of kind of mirroring what's going on down Home Street with the idea that really moving the curb line in and creating some additional parking off Home Street right in front of the building. If the building is set back to create some additional courtyard, then parking could be provided in back. It's not a lot of parking, but there still could be some parking maintained in the back. And this could become more of a civic plaza entrance to the front of the building as well. Again, very conceptual. If the city said, you know, we're not caring about that, we want to retain our parking in the back, it could easily be slid up to the corner as well. This is just very conceptual. So similar to the other concepts that stayed in this building, continues that downtown presence, you know, utilizes this building. All departments based on this new plan could be located here. New construction is as far as optimum function and flow because of the new layout and creating a building that works for your operations. The cons was that you need to vacate the building during demolition. It's a lot more extensive work than some of the other options as far as demolishing it and building new. Parking still remains an issue, even though we've added some here. And there is really no existing expansion. When you look at the cost of this project, construction of this is about $7 million, and the soft cost total for about another $1.2 million, making the total project estimate $8.2 million approximately. So, going back to where I was a second ago, option A, in our opinion, doesn't work. It doesn't fit the long run. Option B can work. It's fairly expensive at a total project of almost $7 million. Option C is almost the same cost. It's slightly higher than option B, and it provides, in our opinion, a better kind of operational flow and connectivity of the entire department. Option D, again, can work, but again, that's one of the higher cost options. Anyway, I think that's, you know, just another bit of information as well. Even if the city council were to say, yeah, let's go, this is great, we like that option, let's proceed. And as all of you know, and Councilman Lehman, you've been through this as well many times, there's that design phase for developing the project. There's that bidding phase for putting it out, and then there's the actual construction. So even if you said go today, it's going to be 2 years till you're actually moving into that new building. So there's that period of time. I also would like to say too, just so you're aware of it, that the state, on all state projects, in the past, they've always used a 6% per year inflation factor. Inflation, of course, we've seen it happen this current year with the rebound of the economy, shortage of construction laborers, an increase in certain cost of material. So there's a fluctuation in the market. But the state always used to put 6% on their projects just to anticipate what that yearly escalation cost could be. So the numbers I'm giving you today are good 2015 numbers, but if the council decides to proceed ahead with the project a year, 2, 3 years in the future, of course, it has to be re-verified at that time based on current construction cost. Anyway, I'm here for your questions.
Thank you. Councilor Mokel.
Could you put option C back up again, since we don't have that one? And the second floor. I don't recall seeing any restrooms on the second floor.
I thought that was in your packet. It just wasn't as detailed as this.
No, we just had the bottom picture.
Oh, really? Okay.
There's some right in there.
They do need to be inserted. We had some extra spaces in here. They do need to be, we need to create some restrooms up on this level.
Okay.
Also, too, just to let you know, right now in this conceptual plan, we're thinking that mechanical, and this again is a very conceptual plan, but we're thinking that the mechanical room and the archive storage would actually occur on a third level above this mass. To not continue, we thought that that was space that would be appropriate up there.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Other questions? Councilor Lehman.
What is the lifespan expectancy of this building?
I'm sorry?
Option C, what's the life expectancy? I mean, the build, how long until we have to expand it then? Your first couple of charts you had when you got here showed going out a few years with staffing needs and so on and so forth.
When we do our studies, we look at a 15-year projection.
How many?
The 15-year projection.
Okay.
The reality is, though, in most of these cases, and you know the way the fluctuation of staff and staff spaces, a lot of times we built into the program the fact, and we're actually doing it in our office right now, that you might have somebody that's an 8x8 cubicle, that now you go to a 6x8 cubicle and you reconfigure space. So my sense, Councilman, is this could be a 20 to 25 year plan easily.
Okay. I've been pretty straightforward since 2001. One-stop shop campus is what I'm looking for as a taxpayer that uses the services. I thought it would cost more than that too. I'm kind of surprised.
So far.
So far, yeah, yeah.
Well, I gotta say, Councilman, that we've had 4 projects bid in the last 6 weeks, and all of our estimates, all of our projects have come in on budget, so I'm pretty comfortable that where we've been with our numbers have been pretty accurate.
Nice.
I think there's a lot of synergies in doing it this way, where you've got you've got the parking, you've got the benefit of having multiple meeting rooms side by side, you got shared facilities. I think it makes staff much more efficient, and it's more efficient for people that get a permit and have to go ask questions from various different departments. You can walk across the street if you have to go to the engineering. You don't have to get in your car and drive. If one staff member has questions from a different department, they're right there. They can walk somebody right over and say, this person can take care of it for you, and they don't have to shuffle you out the door and down the road. I'm a firm believer in the concept. I was back then. I still am. What's the likelihood of taking the 6% yearly multiplier and offsetting it by the potential of selling this property?
We didn't talk to any realtors in the area. It is something we do on a lot of projects as well, to get an estimate of what a building might entail, and as far as what you might expect from the sale of it. That could help to offset it. Another thing that we didn't factor in strongly in the estimate, which will help later, as of 2014, the state of Minnesota passed a statute that allowed city and counties to do construction projects and have the materials be tax exempt. We've got a fire station under construction right now in Rochester that was a approximately an $8 million project that saved $250,000. So the numbers, in my opinion, are a little conservative. Between tax and if you were to look at selling of the property, that might actually help to offset potentially $400,000, $300,000, somewhere in there.
Okay.
All right, how would people like to, how would we like to move forward with this? Is this, we accept it and hold on to this for a little while and come back to it this summer when workload hopefully is a little less? Do we want to move on this now? Where do we think we're at? Sorry, I interrupted you. Counselor Whiting had your hand up.
No, I just wanted to say it's one of those times I agree with Counselor Lehman. And on a lot of these issues, I still think that rather than selling this property, we look at creating a parking lot out of it. But that's a little farther down the road, but I do like the option C.
Could be a good location for Chamber of Commerce, actually.
Something, but not a city hall.
So how do we want to move forward with this? Thoughts?
I think item C is the only way to go. None of the rest of them make any sense. They're too disruptive to staff. This one here, they build it. One day they're here, next day they're over there. End of story.
Seems simple.
Should be.
How do we want to go forward with this? Counselor Whiting.
I'll try a motion. I'll direct staff to receive the results of the city feasibility study, and I think we've provided some direction here for the most part of what our next steps are to, I think timeline, bring it back up in the summer, I think, to discuss a little further movement on it.
Yeah. Counselor Lehman?
I'll second it and ask for clarification of the motion. So the direction included in that is there's consensus is that C is probably the route to go.
That's the assumed consensus, yes.
Okay.
Council and Mayor, if I could make one other comment. Many projects we've done in the past as well, we've actually gone from study to schematic level, and it's kind of this idea of baby steps. And what that supports the city in doing is coming with a final plan and appearance of what the building is going to look like and a more detailed cost estimate. So what it does is it takes into that next level of information without saying, okay, we're doing the entire project, but at least gets more detail and a more accurate estimate.
That's free of charge, right?
Of course, everything we do is free of charge.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Discussion-wise, I haven't weighed in yet, but as I was last time, I'm still vehemently opposed to moving out of this location. We are putting an emphasis on our Main Street downtown and making significant investments as a city into the area, and I think that us moving out of the area definitely negatively impacts the downtown area. So I would like to, we'll have to get some clarification on the motion in a second as to what it is. Not necessarily declare option C as the way we're going. I don't think we're ready for that yet. But just come back and start talking about it again once we have a little breathing room in July or so. Did the motion directly say that option C is what we'd like to go with?
Yes.
The motion did, and I think July is a good time.
Councilor Lehman?
Well, I can appreciate your concern with the downtown, but really a bigger picture, city government has to be representative of not just the downtown, but the businesses on Marshall and Veerling and, Southbridge and the residential in the West End. By moving from here to there, we're becoming more centrally located into a community that has grown that way. So it's, to be equitable, we need to be looking at all of these areas and serving all of them equally.
And I don't disagree with you. That's a discussion that we should absolutely have. I just don't think that we're prepared or expecting to have that final of a discussion this evening. I think it's more of what I would like to see anyway is not saying that we're going with C and direct any further work on it, that we come back and have a big discussion about it after the community has a chance to weigh in between now and summer, because I'm sure that there will be a lot of people who have an opinion on this, and have a really in-depth entire meeting discussion on the pros and cons of going forward with whichever option C, as it is, or whatever so we're just saying, hold on to it until July when we can have a big discussion about it.
No, I think it's no brainer. I think option C is the best option.
I've been proven wrong many a time.
Me too.
So we have motion, second on the floor. Could you restate the motion for me?
To direct staff to receive the results of the city feasibility study and provide, move forward with option C and discuss further details this summer, July.
Okay. So is that intending that we're not going to do any work on it until July when we have a discussion about it again, or is that intending that work will
I'll
be done
leave it
between
as
now and then?
intending to move forward with option C. See where that goes.
Okay. So we have motion, second on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Myself, passes 4-1 with Tabke in dissent.
Thank you, council. I'm available for any questions, and, all right, thanks for the time.
Can you let staff know what a cost of that study might be?
Oh, yes, I'd be glad to. I'll give a breakdown on that, Councilman.
Thank you.
All right, that takes care of that item, so we're moving on to item number 9, other business. Anybody have an item to discuss? Councilor Luce.
I've got a question on last Tuesday morning when the lieutenant governor came out. How many people were notified that she was coming, and how many people were supposed to be there?
Councilmember Luce, council members, I sent an email to all 5 of you letting you know about the press conference being called. I found out about it earlier in the day, so I think it was Monday morning, and I emailed you towards the end of the day on Monday.
And I found out about it the day before, that was the exact time and location of where everything was going to be. At that point?
My email came through MBTA, one of them, and they requested my presence being their representative, and they mentioned your name, and I was under the understanding that any more than that would be improper because of not proper notification.
Quorum.
Well, I can say that I was aware of it at the Met Council meeting for the Land Use Advisory Committee on the 24th. I wasn't given a location, just a time and date.
I'm just
Okay.
pointing out the fact that I was personally invited, you were personally invited, I don't know if anybody else was, but proper notice was not given for us to all be there.
Okay. Just quick point of clarification on that is that there was no city business taking place at that point. And so notification, while we strive for notification as often as possible for public notification when there's going to be a quorum at a location, there's no city business taking place at that location. Am I correct in that, Mr. Thompson, that that is the way the law is working, and we work really hard to get there, but when circumstances such as this, which come quickly, it is well within everyone's rights to do that?
Yes, the presence of a quorum or the council at one location when there's no city business being discussed is not, it's not an open meeting law issue as long as there's no city business being discussed. Out of an abundance of caution, I think staff makes every effort to, and we know it 3 days ahead of time, to post notice of a possibility of a quorum. I don't know the background of this one, but when that can't happen, it shouldn't stop you from going. Again, make sure you don't sit together and discuss city business. You can certainly be there, be present, listen to a presentation, but you're not allowed to discuss city business. And so maybe there was some misunderstanding about that will hopefully clear up going forward.
Yeah, I don't think there's any misunderstanding on that, is there?
Well, the public's perception is where I'm going, they know the law too, and, they perceive that if there's 3 of us there, we're probably gonna talk about something. Not that we did.
There were 3 there.
But the perception, it just leaves people thinking.
I just think it's hard when you get invited by different entities to be at an event to know that somebody else is going to be invited as well.
All right, other business, Councilor Lehman.
I'll hit it from a different angle. Not that topic, but I'll use the church ribbon cutting as an example of how it shouldn't happen. 4 of us were there. All of us were invited. 2 of us were in the crowd, not together. 2 of us were on the podium, Mayor and Kathy, reading a proclamation, which was read as the mayor, Councilor Mokel, and Councilor Whiting leaving the other 2 out of it, which was unprofessional, tacky at best, and it shouldn't have happened. Even if we're not there, the protocol is on behalf of the mayor, city council, staff, and the citizens of Shakopee, we'd like to welcome you here.
And I apologize to
You
you.
did, and I just, I think it would be good etiquette and training for all of us to be on the same page with that, you know, in the future. When I spoke at the memorial service for the vets a couple years back, Jay was there. I went out of my way to make sure that all of council and staff were, you know, appreciative of what they've done and stuff, and I think it's important that we're at our very finest at that moment. We can have our nitpicking one-on-one or whatever, but,
Well, as well, if you recall, I said on behalf of council when I spoke
Yep.
as well, and I made note of all people who were there. I did not know you were there.
well, but it's,
Well, I
it's still not
made-
fair because, you know, if Councilor Lewis wasn't there, he still is a member of this body and should be reflected as so.
Right, which is what I'm saying, is that when I spoke, I thanked and welcomed everyone on behalf of city council.
Yep.
On myself and city council, and then pointed out the people who were specifically there.
Yep.
So I just wanted to make that clear, that everyone was acknowledged from that. I do agree with Councilor Mogul that it was a mistake to, which is not the way it was worded in the proclamation, and I think everybody understands that, and I'm very confident that it won't happen again. So, I have one item of other business that I'd like to bring up.
I have one as well.
Okay, you can go first.
I'm just concerned about Thursday night that we're going to have this as a taped event, especially when we're getting emails and now a packet of confidential material. I just am concerned about what that can happen at that meeting by making it public. That's put on YouTube and personal data.
That was going to be my concern as well, is that I believe, and I completely agree with you, that as
they're-
often as possible,
Yep.
meetings can and should be taped, and I think that we've made all attempts and have really done that, so I hope you can agree with that piece. This is something that is people's personal data while it is an open meeting, and anybody can come to the open meeting, and we're only going to discuss what is non-confidential information. That does not make it the responsible and proper thing to do, to have that, and as well let us have conversations that we should be able to have on camera. I just don't think it's right to do that, have those discussions on camera, and I just wanted to see what other people think, and Councilor Mokel brought it up first.
Well, we're not using names, my understanding is we're using numbers for candidates, so that pretty much takes that out of the equation.
Except for the fact that we're going to be discussing their history and backgrounds and things like that, and
When you display it on a YouTube channel, I think that exposes you to a lot more data privacy. People can come back to you for,
Well, hopefully you don't stand up and take a sheet and hold it like this in front of the camera. I don't plan on doing that.
but I think there's also the impression that you're maybe talking about somebody. There's, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, when you talk about employment law, even the appearance.
They're not employees.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'm not fully up to speed on this meeting and what's being proposed.
to catch up to speed, is that on Thursday, we are having a council, it's an open meeting, and we're having a discussion about the candidates for the city administrator position, and it is going to be held at the county boardroom, is that correct? right?
Yes, there's a planning commission meeting at that same time in this room, so we had to go elsewhere.
So we're going to the county boardroom, and the reason we're going to the county boardroom is so that it can be taped. And so then, as with any taped meeting, it gets posted on our website and on YouTube as well. And I don't feel that's proper. There may not be anything illegal about it or anything like that because it is an open meeting, but I do believe that it's improper and inconsiderate to the folks who are applying.
So is the question, should it be taped? Or is that what
And
you're
then
trying?
shown on your-
Is that what you're
Mhm.
trying to decide, whether or not to tape the meeting? That's a question for a majority of the council to decide how you want to handle it. And if it is a meeting, so whether it's taped or not, there is an issue about private data. It gets delicate. But the actual law on that is if you need to talk about private data in an open meeting, you can do it. Yeah, it's not, you prefer not to. I'll go back to if you remember the organized collection issue, when that came before you, there was private data in those proposals, and the advice was if you need to talk about it, you can, but it'd be better not to, but you can. So whether you want to tape it or not is a decision for a majority of the council to make. Either way, whether you tape it or not, what you can talk about doesn't change. I understand it goes to how widely it might be disseminated, but what you can say doesn't change anything.
Councilor Luce first.
Go ahead.
Okay, Ms. Hanson?
My only request from a staff position is that if you, I would like to see it be taped for minutes purposes, not necessarily for putting out, but for staff, for us to keep records of the minutes of the meeting. That would be appreciated and helpful for staff.
Okay. Councilor Luce?
Could we get a guideline from you as just what is yes and what is no to talk about? Because, you know, I don't want to step over the line.
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. I think I actually did it for the organized collection one, if I recall correctly. So.
Councilor Lehman?
My understanding is we're using, candidate 1, candidate 2, candidate 3, and we're not there to decide. We're there to pick what we can agree on as the top 5 candidates to move forward. And at that point, them 5 candidates will be scheduled for more in-depth interviews by the council. So this is, to me, not a real in-depth. It's if we all, did our homework, we should be able to walk in there with each person having a list of the top 5 as numbers. You could almost walk in there with 5 chips with different numbers on them, throw them in a hat, and start stacking them up and see which numbers got the most chips. And take the top, take the 5 top, not all of us are going to agree, but let's say candidate number X gets, all 5 agree that candidate X should be one of the 5. Well, that one is one, and start working down to your 5, and once you got your 5, you're done,
Councilor Luce?
I think that's a great idea. I mean, there's no sense beating something to death, and if we know who our top picks are, everybody make their top picks. There's probably going to be 3, maybe 4 that we're all going to, they might get 2 votes from everybody or 3, and, we can decide on those, but the top picks, we should just get them done and get it over with.
I think that's a great idea. So let's do that, and if we have discussions, not tape that.
No.
Well, I'm very uncomfortable with having discussions about personnel information that is taped on camera. Anybody who wants to have the information can come to the meeting and watch the proceedings. I am just very uncomfortable. I do not think it is right to do that. We can have all the discussions we want about public policy, opinions, those kinds of things. I do not feel it is appropriate to discuss personnel on camera. I think that's a line that we shouldn't cross if we don't absolutely have to. And this, I don't believe we absolutely have to. Councilor Whiting?
I say let's see how it goes, and if we can do it as quickly as Councilors Lehman and Luce would like to see, we don't go into too much discussion, then I think we'll be all right on camera. If we have to go into more detail, then I think we should make the call at that time.
Yeah, if we feel like we have to go into great detail and stuff, well, I mean, I'm just not a fan of going off camera doing the people's business.
I understand.
Okay. So, Counselor Mokel,
Yes.
do you have an opinion? Are you okay with that course of action, and we can decide when we're there? What do you think?
I still not okay with it, but
Okay.
sounds like I'm outvoted anyway, so.
Okay. Any other business? All right, entertain a motion to adjourn. Councilor Whiting,
Make a motion to adjourn till Thursday, April 9th at 7 PM at the Scott County Boardroom.
do we have a second?
Yes.
Second by Councilor Luce. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Was that all? What did I hear?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All
4-1.
unanimous, 5-0. I
4-1,
believe
not
that's
adjourned.
It's 4-1.
1-4, we're not adjourned.
yeah. I don't think we're gonna go with that. So unanimous vote. We are adjourned. Thank you.
All right.